DVD.
Great DVD.
My Blu-ray. So.
Oh boy, Butch, that's old school. Wow.
Yes.
The Blu-ray's gorgeous.
I'm resident of Colorado for YouTube, Joel Sades. I'm joined by my buddy Gordon Dymowski, my buddy Butch Rosenbalm, my buddy Patrick McCray. And if you can't tell by the DVD covers, we're here to discuss Quartermass and The Pit, which I had never seen until yesterday and today.
What?
Yeah, I never saw it.
Okay, Jewel. So Jewel, you like Hammer films, right?
Yeah, yes.
So you like Hammer films, but you've never seen Quartermass in the Pit.
No, I'd never seen this.
What a wonderful opportunity this was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, Joel, what did you think about it? Since you're the new one among us, seriously, I'm being a little facetious, but seriously, I want to hear what you have to say.
I couldn't tell. I think this probably will not get enough credit for, and I don't think I don't know if he'll ever admit this or not, but I think this helped inspire John Carpenter's The Thing a bit, to a degree. I'm not saying large.
Well, let me do you one better, Joel, because Kino Lorber is releasing the Quartermass Experiment, which is the first teleplay that inspired a later movie, and this was from one of the teleplays, and Carpenter pretty much said, yeah, Quartermass was an inspiration. So this isn't just, he didn't just steal from The Thing. I think he borrowed Nigel Neal's thinking and approach. Like, you could easily create like a bucket, a category, where you could put Nigel Neal as a writer in with John Carpenter, in with Howard Hawks, and that you may think they only do one thing, but then you look and you go, oh, well, they did that as well. Like, the same guy who brought us The Thing also brought us Starman. Howard Hawks did Rio Bravo, which is a great movie. I saw it after you guys saw it. Great movie. But he also did His Girl Friday. And Neal is the same guy who wrote this script. He adapted 1984 for British television. He wrote a couple of non-horror science fiction screenplays. But Neal is like I think the closest you could get is Rod Serling, in that he set the tone for British television science fiction the same way Serling set the tone for American television science fiction. But we're talking about the movie version, and he wrote the screenplay from his teleplays. So,
yeah, I have a question about Quartermass, the character itself. Is he, for Hammer, in a sense, is he their big sort of like Dick Tracy, James Bond character in a sense?
He's actually an adaptation of a BBC character. So and Neal wrote 3 teleplays. Quartermass Experiment, Quartermass 2, and Quartermass in the Pit. The first 2 movies were made in the early 50s. They featured Brian Donlevy. You can find them on YouTube under the names The Creeping Unknown and Enemy from Space. And they were actually the movies that led Hammer to think, hey, maybe there's something in this horror thing. Because I think within a few years, they did Christopher Lee's Dracula and Curse of Frankenstein. It was like, okay, we're in whole pound. And there were funding issues and other issues that led to Quartermass in the Pit being made in the late 60s. So he's not like their big. He's a big character in British culture. He's like you get Doctor Who from Quartermass. You get a lot of kind of the British idea of the really smart guy who knows things and who pushes the issue. You get that from Quartermass, the same way you get a lot of science fiction from Star Trek.
Okay, cool. So, Gordon, when did you first see this movie?
I saw it in high school. I became a huge Doctor Who fan in high school. Surprise, surprise. And, you learn, okay, well, Doctor Who was influenced by Quartermass. And I first learned about Quartermass there were books of the scripts of all 3 of the serials, all 3 Quartermass serials. And then it led to going to the video store, and I found 5 Million Years to Earth, which is the alternate title for this. And I immediately fell in love with it. It's one of my this is a film that I hold in as high regard as Patrick does The Ninth Configuration. I mean, it's that kind of level of film for me.
Cool. Butch, when did you first see this, Dave?
Mid-late 80s. We had at the time independent channel 43, which is now a Fox affiliate, and most of their programming was movies and the animated shows at the time, He-Man, G.I. Joe, etc., etc. But on Friday nights, and I think every night, but especially on Friday night, they would start showing like horror / sci-fi, and I happened to tune in. I think I missed like the first 10, 15 minutes. So at first I was like, what the hell is going on? But, and I'm going to reference the comment that I made on Jules' post that prompted me to be here. This is the first one I saw. So Andrew Kerr, to me, was Quartermass. And he has this bundle of energy, and he's like, do this, do that. And it's authoritative without being rude. And him, Julian Glover, and of course the ever lovely Barbara Shelley being in this film. And I think this movie actually kind of made me fall in love with her, so to speak, and just enjoyed the heck out of it. I'm like, man, the British do everything better. They do horror better. They do science fiction better. So I enjoyed it and got lucky. A local video store back in the late 90s and early noughts was selling these Hammer collection double features and was able to get it. Had never seen any of the other earlier Quartermass because for whatever reason they weren't on around here very much.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick, when did you first see this movie, dude?
What movie?
Quartermass in the Pit.
Okay, we're supposed to talk about Dallas.
No, Patrick, that was tomorrow night.
Oh, yeah. Interesting. My co-writer, a guy named David Rains, is sort of like the Library of Alexandria. He wrote the best of our Star Trek Continuing Mission episodes. He's just a really brilliant writer. And if David likes something, it's pretty much going to be good. And so he knew of my tastes, and he said, you got to see these Quartermass movies. And so probably early into living in Knoxville, I strike that, early into being in Knoxville, if
you can call that living.
Yeah, okay, Butchbeer. Yeah, I was waiting. Early into all of that, I picked it up. That same series that Butch had big sort of clamshell VHS sort of editions, and so I got it on that, and it was fantastic. I mean, it's this wonderful blend of mythology and folk horror and science fiction, and of course, the devil. And all of the best stuff in this wonderful combination that he and I are both really, really fond of when it's put together. And other than maybe Life Force, it's never been put together better than in this movie. London in Flames, and it's a huge sweep. It literally is the biggest story you could tell on the smallest budget, which is magnificent. And yet the budget's irrelevant because they don't show anything that can't be depicted reasonably. So I just thought it was a marvelous movie. And then years later, I was in Seattle, which is like utopia, and there was a ton of little movie theaters. They were movie theaters. I mean, they had projectors, and it was but maybe they sat 50 at the most. I think the TV I watched it on last night was bigger. than the screen they had there, and it was off of a coffee house. And it was a great. I wish I knew the theater, because I wish I knew whether or not it were still open, because I'd do a promo for it, because they had things like depressing film festivals and stuff like that. Stuff I'd really get into. That would get me out of the house. But it was great, because I saw it with my cousin Carla, who a great lady. I did not grow up with. She was my grandmother's brother's daughter, and a cool woman. Made aphrodisiac chocolates and things, which I did not try, even though I am from Kentucky. And so it was great. And I remember we went into the theater and sat down, and Seattle, because of Microsoft, is a very nerdy city. It has this reputation of being, everybody looks like Matt Dillon in Singles or something, but no, it's tremendously nerdy. And I remember leaning over to Carla and saying, Carla, make no sudden moves, and yet be prepared to leave the theater very quickly, especially if they make eye contact. I don't think most of the people in this theater have seen a female. So I think they just thought it was something created by Lucasfilm, a bunch of guys on IMAX for 6 months. Now Mid-Journey does it like that. But yeah, we were very cautious and viewed the film again. And it was just, oh God, to see a scratched up shitty print in this tiny theater, but by God, it was real, was honestly one of the best film going experiences of my life. I mean, I got to see 2001 in IMAX, like real IMAX. And in the early days of all of that in San Diego, Science Museum. Oh, this was far better. Far more spectacular.
Yeah. When I was watching this movie, I couldn't help but think that other movies just sort of took their characters, and since they couldn't make their characters Quartermass, they just made a bunch of their characters regular characters and put them in their story, but they were sort of inspired by this character here.
They're sort of 1/8 mass. It's Quartermass. It's not Quartermass. It's Quartermass.
Jewel, if you really want to see how much someone could rip off from Quartermass, on Tubi, go to the Third Doctor, third Doctor Who, Series 7, Third Doctor. Watch every episode from Spearhead. It's only 20-some episodes. That is Quartermass.
It's the unit thing and Breen. Breen or Green. Julian Glover. Big similar.
And I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent, but Quartermass 2 has an infamous tracking shot where it tracks to the Earth, and then you see like a little radar thing. You don't see it in this movie because it's wrong radar thing, and then you see some military types looking at a radar screen. Doctor Who is ripped off constantly, at least 5 times in the classic series and several times in the new series. So yeah, a lot of people have homaged Quartermass, let's say.
I'll give a great example. A movie that I saw, I didn't necessarily love the movie and the way they did it at the end, but a movie I could see being a Quartermass movie or Quartermass being in is As Above, So Below, which is a weird movie.
Oh, I like that movie.
Yeah, it's, to me, that could be a Quartermass movie. That could have Quartermass in it. It deals with like going down into the Paris catacombs and into hell. And it's about, your past haunting you too. And this movie, just like that movie, this movie has a lot of psychology too, which I like. I love the way the creatures look. I love how the actors are seeing the creatures when they're not really there. It gives that paranoia sense, like John Carpenter would later use in The Thing. A very, very good movie from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, and there's 2 movies that I think really build on that kind of paranoid feel. that come from it. The first I would say is Prince of Darkness, because John Carpenter's writer's name, as Patrick once pointed out, was Martin Quatermass.
Yeah.
So that fact is copyright Patrick. I didn't come up with it. The other one, which ironically someone else in this call told me about, and which I also saw in high school, was Toby Hooper's Life Force.
What a great movie!
Yeah,
I love that movie. Joel, have you ever seen that movie?
No.
Oh boy,
Joel,
Joel, you can see that.
I have a feeling you're going to be seeing it soon.
It's a really good movie.
Yeah, Joel, we gotta fix that.
You'll like it. I mean, this is the thing. We're not setting you up.
No.
Yeah, because
Charles Manson
Quatermass,
sort of.
yeah, sorry, but I think with Quatermass and with, I think when you look at like John Carpenter and the people that have been inspired by him, Quartermass is about big ideas.
Yeah.
It's about big idea. It's about the idea of that all that we had in terms of lore has a rational basis, and usually in most kind of media, it's, oh well, it's not really a ghost. It's just it's a weird thing with mirrors. Here we're thinking it's about the fact that a race from another planet nearby was engaging in these kind of weird race purges, decides, okay, well, our race is dying, so we can't go all the way up to Earth because we can't survive there. So let's surgically modify apes so that they can be our colonists, and they put all their stuff into us. In fact, part of the reason why this story idea came about was that in the late 50s, there was a series of race riots in England, and Neil was like, okay, what's going on here? And I think the fact that it's showing up in 1967 rather than made in the early 50s makes for, I think, a very timely it resonates more. And Patrick, what shenanigans are you engaging into? I just saw you
It's like, I don't know if you can see it, but that thumbs up bubble keeps appearing, but I'm making no gestures. I'm not doing anything to initiate.
Let me see if I can.
I wasn't doing that. It's not like we're the Brady Bunch, See, it's not. It doesn't do it with that. So I don't know what it's. I think
Skype is becoming sentient.
It could be. Now, Joel, what did you think of Homo erectus popping up in this? Give a thumbs down to that. Because when you discover Homo erectus in this movie, you're not expecting it. And yet, as it turns out, we all have Homo erectus within us still. Comment, Joel.
Oh,
although Mars is involved, what if it had been Uranus instead?
That would have been painful.
Homo
I think.
erectus come from Uranus, or did Uranus once house Homo erectus?
Well,
Answer. And don't wait for the translation, Joel. Answer me not, Joel. I'm just giving you a tough time.
Well, let me say
He's
this.
gonna answer. I love him. I love this man.
When you get into the concept of aliens in any movie,
Yeah,
a lot of times it's about, most alien movies are about invasion of Earth. This movie, necessarily it isn't. It's completely different. And the fact that you get into a concept of, okay, these aliens, they were dying. They had to leave. It's sort of reminiscent of almost Superman to a degree, in a weird way. Instead of being about, one alien coming to Earth and having all this power, it's about something completely different, where these aliens, they can't come to our surface, so they create this whole other life force. I love that concept because it's something different. It's something new. It's something I've never seen before in other movies. Again,
it's a cool, refreshing feeling. It's crisp and clear and light.
And all the characters in this movie are really, one, they're smart. Two, no one's boring in this movie. Every character in this movie is relatable. You get them. And that really helped me watch this movie too. It's like, you guys have never recommended me anything bad, and that I appreciate.
Give it time.
Yeah, wait until Jewel finds out that Neil wrote a television script called The Year of the Sex Olympics.
Did he?
In 1968.
Listen, one of my favorite installments is called Halloween Resurrection. Great movie. Watch it sometime. Butch, what's your favorite scene, dude? Save me.
My favorite scene to save you is probably a shot to the. Oh wait, no, you mean in this movie? So, hold on. There's quite a few. To pick one, the one I really like, and it's actually, I was going to mention this, the special effects for late 60s is quite good. Everything looks good. If I ever get
scene, great.
Yeah, if I ever get a lot of money to do a Dracula film, I want to do like when they stake Dracula and they would do the time lapse and I want the CGI to make it look just like that. But this film, God, I totally went off on a tangent there. Sorry. Everything looks good. It fits. It works. And I'm going to go when, right after they have the drill trying to go in, and Quartermass and the drill guy are both kind of, and they come back in, and it's like, oh, your drill must have worked, and you see the spacecraft starting to explode, and then you're like, I took it, the camera was showing you from inside the craft, and you see it like little cracks, and it breaks, and then they show, I've always called them the crickets because they look like locusts. But you see the actual alien, and just that whole bit right there. Even I was like, I remember the first time I watched them, I never realized that locusts look like devils or demons. Take your choice, whatever term you want to use there.
When you give them horns,
knowing I'd actually hit upon one of the themes of this film.
Yeah, Patrick, what's your favorite scene?
Joel, this is one of those movies where it's the overall effect. I gotta say, I got a soft spot for Julian Glover. Really, any Julian Glover scene in this movie is just wonderful. He is the perfect antagonist. His giving himself over is really interesting. And he makes so much sense. I love how all of the authorities, when they have alternate theories that make sense. As a skeptic, it's like, well, God, that sounds really good, which is a very intelligent way to deconstruct skepticism without embracing something goofy in its place. Speaking of which, I was working at Suncoast years ago, and somehow we got a copy of Star Trek Generations very early. It was like, $150 or something. It was, and at the same time, there was a Disney film that we were selling. And whenever someone would, and we had this one copy of Generations in the background, and whenever someone would say, yeah, I'd like a copy of a goofy movie, I would just hand them this copy of Generations.
Well, yeah, because Generations is a goofy movie.
It is a goofy. You see, it's a goofy movie.
Gordon, what's your favorite scene?
Well, I don't think you could boil this movie down to a single scene as being effect, because I love it. It's a very well constructed film. There's every piece kind of relates to every other piece. There's no like weird lapses in logic. There's no really strange. There's no really strange, like, where does that come from? And it really focuses, I mean, the great thing about British humor is this is very much in the H.G. Wells camp of taking something high end and putting it in the everyday.
Yeah.
One scene that really struck out is in the middle when you're seeing the effects, and I think the character's name is Sutter. He's like a poor guy, and he's talking about how he sees this vision of like all these creatures flying up in the air, leaping up into the air, and straight up, and Quartermass asked him, "What color is the sky?" He's going to say blue, and he says it's dark purple, which I think tells you right there this is not even. I mean, it's not even like, okay, it's not a vision of, say, maybe it's not a terrestrial vision, and because they theorize it's Mars, although you could honestly say that maybe it was just some other nearby planet. There's a whatever.
Jewel, it could have been Uranus.
Yeah, probably would have been Uranus. Maybe Uranus. I don't know.
Dark purple, Jewel, dark purple.
Yeah, Dark Purple did a great song called "Smoke on the Water." You need to listen to that.
I've heard it.
Well, what was your favorite scene?
Did it involve Uranus, Joe?
What was the result of Uranus?
No, my favorite scene is just the psychology of this movie. When you have the character saying, I saw it, and then they're flipping out. Again, my favorite scene is more the paranoia of this movie because it adds the terror. There is comedy in this movie, there's a great mix of horror and comedy in this movie, and the comedy isn't so funny that it tones out the horror. It just adds to it. It's both are great compliments to each other in this movie. And I guess, and I'm not trying to give a cheap answer, but that's sort of my answer. The psychology of this movie altogether just made it a fun watch.
Yeah, and it fits its paranoid because Nigel Neal grew up in the Cold War, so he was one of those go under the desk in case of a nuclear bomb, very much that kind of weird paranoid. And plus, he's from the Isle of Man, which is a very isolated place. The Isle of Man is where you don't necessarily want to see Homo erectus, and it's nowhere near Uranus.
If you do, it's the last thing you see.
Yes, basically. But Neil he's one of these guys who really, and he adapted his own teleplay because you can find the original, you can get the original television version, the BBC version. I know you can find some, the BBC did release it on Blu-ray in England a few years ago. You can find it for streaming on a site called dailymotion.com, it's a French site that has a very liberal view of copyright, let's just say. All I would suggest is if you like black and white television and you got 3 hours to spare, because like each episode is like 30 minutes long, it's worth checking out, especially episode 5, because the scene where the insects are all jumping about in the television scene. Keep in mind this was televised in 57, 58. In that sequence, there are sequences where you see the aliens' heads exploding.
Damn.
Like it's not fake. It's like they actually. There's one where you see the little insect creeping, like two of its legs are broken. It actually got the showing in trouble with people were like, oh, this is too violent. But and I found it ironic that a Hammer film didn't go there. Like I wanted to see an insect head exploding in a Hammer film, but I think they were just Roy Ward Baker was probably like, yeah, let's not go there. I got to do Scars of Dracula at some point. I got to save my reputation.
I have some questions for you guys on this. If they did a Quartermass movie today, who would you cast as Quartermass?
Considering the guy, he still climbs the Himalayas every year.
Yeah.
I know who I'm talking about. Brian Blessed.
It's funny because I was thinking when I was watching this, Andrew Carr is like the early Brian Blessed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tom Hulce has become a good successor to Brian Blessed. If you've seen him lately, he looks like Brian Blessed. He's transformed. Yeah. Speaking of Tom Hulce, I think F. Murray Abraham would be a hell of a Quartermass.
Mm-hmm.
He's in that Guillermo del Toro Cabinet of Curiosities. He plays an extremely determined, heroic doctor, and that's it. I mean, this is one of those parts that's a show. It's kind of like The Doctor. It's a showcase for any great British actor. With a lot of sense of purpose and determination. It's a treat for any actor to get to play. So, and I think a good actor is going to have fun with it. Yeah, I mean, who would you get?
Gordon, who would you get?
Patrick asked you a question, Joel.
I'm
Who would
thinking.
you get?
No,
He's thinking. He's cogitating.
I'm thinking.
Okay, is he thinking about the Isle of Man?
He's thinking of Robert Preston.
Let's see, who would I cast? I'd go for Brian Blessed. I'm trying to think of a good alternate. This is going to be a little bit, maybe a little controversial. Hugh Laurie.
Oh, he'd be either Hugh Laurie or Stephen Fry would be dynamite in this.
Yeah.
Let's see, who else? If you wanted to get a little more obscure in terms of British actors, there's an actor named Adrian Lester who was one of the leads on a show called Hustle. So he can do the emotional spin on a dime that you would need for Quartermass, I think.
The guy, I've got the guy. You would know him. Did you ever see the sequel to a little sleeper called Jurassic Park?
Yes, I have.
Okay. It was an art film kind of thing. Well, the sequel had a hunter in it, a bald hunter.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I kind of couch it like that is he's not as known to American audiences, but his name is Pete Postlethwaite.
Yeah.
He plays the apothecary in the Leonardo DiCaprio Romeo and Juliet, which is actually in a lot of ways one of the truest and best adaptations of Romeo and Juliet on film. I mean, in terms of how it presents the story and the politics and so on and so forth.
There's just one problem, Patrick. I just looked him up on Wikipedia. He passed away in 2011.
Isn't that a shitter? God damn it. And I say that because Pete Postlethwaite, I mean, I don't want anybody to die, A, but two, Pete Postlethwaite was a really good RSC actor. That guy was the balls. He was great. Yeah, but Pete Postlethwaite would have been my guy.
Good pick. Butch.
I got somebody stuck in my head and I can't get him out. So, Tom Hiddleston.
Oh yeah, Tom Hiddleston would be fun. He's just one of those actors who can do. You just want to watch.
He I was watching an interview or reading. I don't remember anymore now. I'm getting old and can't remember things. But he was talking about, I started playing Loki when I was like 35, and now he's in his 50s. There's nothing wrong with Brian Blessed, but Brian Blessed's what? Isn't he in his 70s?
Oh, older. And the reason I say Brian Blessed still is because he climbs the Himalayas every year.
But I think with Tom, you could do two or three. You could do the three best-known Quartermass films, and he'd still be relatively young for the role.
Now, if you had a time machine, Leo McKern.
Yeah.
Leo.
Yeah.
The thing about Quartermass, for me, is he's like the first, for me, science hero.
Yeah.
We have a lot of the science hero, if you will, the professor. As much as I hate that because everybody goes to Gilligan's Island, but the guy who seemingly knows a little bit about everything, and that's the thing I like about this role. It's like it's like a great role that somebody can come in. Like, I know a lot of people that didn't like Mel Gibson's Hamlet, and truthfully, it was the first version of Hamlet that didn't make me want to vomit having to watch it. And that's no, am I insulting Lawrence Olivier? No, I didn't like White Hamlet. I know that's kind of the point of the film, but I liked him going, oh, what is this back here before me? Blah, 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 blah. I wanted somebody, to get up and do something. And I feel like Quartermass is the same type of role.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Lenses multiple inter.
You're a bear claw man. You can't stand the Danish. But in all seriousness, something I had some point to make, and it's irrelevant now. Who did you recommend? Mel Gibson playing Hamlet as? Oh no! What I was we were talking about the first science hero. Well, and there's Professor Challenger.
Mm-hmm.
Who they're not as well known, kind of by us, but yeah, this bearded, robust, kind of David Ford-like character who would throw people out windows if he disagreed with them. I don't remember which of the books does he do that in.
Well,
remember?
There's 3 books and 2 short stories. There's The Lost World, which is what he's best known for. There's The Poison Belt.
The gas one, yeah.
Yep, the gas one. And go to LibriVox, Gutenberg, download it, read it. You'll thank me later. Arthur Conan Doyle. There's the Land of Mist, which is basically Conan Doyle was trying to earn money for his spiritual seance thing. So it's not a very good novel. I would never encourage anyone to read it, except maybe Jewel, but I'm a masochist that way. I would say this that way. There's When the Earth Screamed, which is kind of we think the Earth is a living entity, so let's drill a hole and puncture it and see what happens. And then there's a nice little, it's I think one of the last stories Conan Doyle wrote, called The Disintegration Machine. You can find there is a film version that was done a few years ago by a director named Peter C. Davison. You can find it on YouTube. It's basically Challenger and his biographer, Ned, meet a scientist who's basically invented a way you can disintegrate people and then reintegrate them. So like in the scene of this story, Ned's like, hey, I'll volunteer to be tried on. So Ned walks, he's got it's like a gun pointed at him. Turns on the machine. The scientist and Challenger talk for like 5-10 minutes about ethics. The scientist turns the machine back, and the Ned reappears, and Ned's like, "Oh, okay, you can turn the switch anytime now. I'm ready." Like, dude, we were talking for 10 minutes. Oh no, you weren't. Yeah, there's the clock. We were talking for 10 minutes. I mean, it's got a nice, snappy little ending, and I would say that's one you definitely have to read.
Jewel, I'll tell you something. For one thing, I'll disagree with Gordon on one thing, and this is what I tell students all the time: reading is for losers. But whatever you do, you don't want to be caught reading a book. This kind of guy's carrying a book.
Yeah, do ebooks. You can just read them on your phone. And if if people give you a hard time, it's like, oh no, I'm just looking at pictures on Instagram.
TikTok. I'm on TikTok.
Yeah, I'm on the tickety-tack like all the kids.
But seriously, Jewel, there was a game that was played at Suncoast called the Playboy Shuffle. I got to tell you about the Playboy Shuffle. So on weekdays, a businessman, just when business would come in alone and there was no one else in the store, they would wander over to the video Playmate section, the Playboy section. And this would only work because you had 2 employees at a time on weekdays, and if you had a female and a male, and so you would have the male at the desk, and you'd have the male at the desk, and then the woman would be somewhere else stocking something in the store, and so the businessman would kind of take a long time in that Playboy section. It would take a long time, and he would eventually he would eventually, with all of this, he would wander up to the cash register with the tape. As he would be about midway there, the female would say, "Hey, Patrick, could you, open up these boxes in the back?" And then she would go to the register, and he would veer off to another part of the store. And like an excruciating 10 minutes later, as meetings are happening at his workplace that he's not there for, and so on and so forth, we would switch places, or they would switch places, and the guy would start to approach it, and we would do it again, and then again, and it was an amazing sport. Playboy Shuffle.
I have my Quartermass selections if you want them. Number one, I guess I'll switch the character up a bit. I would love to see Lenny James play the character. Great actor.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think he would fit the role nicely. Really smart actor, really good actor, and I know he's not, I do believe he's British. The next actor I'm going to mention, Paul Bettany. I'll probably mispronounce his last name.
Bettany.
Yeah.
Ron Popeil.
Those are my two. So
Gordon Jump. Conrad Janis.
Gene Rayburn.
God, Gene Rayburn is the most satanic figure ever. When he gets that smile, go back and look. He's my favorite Satan, and I love them all. Like at Halloween, we have to see. No, that's just one of Satan's elves.
I love how they reference the devil in this movie, and they use the devil. Hobbs is another name for the devil.
They're not running the Dark Shadows Appreciation Society. So, having said that,
you heard it here first, folks.
If anybody thinks if anybody here thinks I have any control over my podcast,
no,
they are dead wrong. Okay?
In the words of Carole King, you make me feel like a natural woman.
Joel, you've been paying us to do all this. I mean,
at
least you've been keeping me afloat with Green River soda and Greek yogurt.
Joel, look what you've done for me and my whole world. Joel, you mean the world to me.
Oh God, Patrick's singing now. We've crossed a border.
I did such a fine job with Mr. Sandman. I think that I did a really lovely cover of that.
Cool.
Oh, I'm not criticizing your singing. I'm just saying that.
Yeah. It was. Oh God. Okay, so we all picked Quartermasses. What's something you would like to see the character of Quartermass do as an adventure or story?
I'd probably lose about 20 pounds because it would be good for his overall, heart. He needs to be around for a while. Quartermass in the Pritikin camp. Where's the beef? Where's Clara Peller? I need her.
No.
Like fight monsters and stuff. Fight topless vampire women from space. And that leads us to what? Life Force.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine this Quartermass in about 10 years. He's in Chicago, Illinois, and he meets a certain reporter. Or maybe even 5 years. So we said it before the series. He starts telling a not so young Carl Kochak about all this stuff. Yeah, and then the Martians were actually looked like locusts, and they were the inspiration. And you see Carl Kochak, or you're like, what? And,
Tony, this is big news.
Or you see these two FBI agents, one's young and dark-haired, the other is female and red-haired, and they go to a guy in a wheelchair, and it's like, Professor Quartermass, and he starts spewing all this stuff, and one of them's like, maybe we should start a section And
If they were
at the MPI.
they were to do that, you know who should play Quartermass? John Carpenter.
That would be fun.
John Carpenter.
That would,
I'm sorry to say this. John Carpenter kept Quartermass alive in the 80s and 90s, at least for people like me. So and I think he would be like, huh? I ever tell you?
Here's
And
the
then you throw a line about, did I tell you about the time we went to the North Pole? And you can just leave it at that.
Yeah.
John Carpenter now looks like the elderly Lopan.
Yeah.
He does the hair and the beard and the. They just give Lopan a cigarette or a ziggurat if he were an ancient Babylonian.
Yeah, but I'm sure that if you crossed him, he'd give Kurt Russell a call and they both deliver a royal smackdown on whoever crossed them.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be great? Lopan and Jack become pals. They bond over knives. That is that's a Blackie Collins Tac 3, by the way, the knife that he uses.
I would like to see Quartermass do the dark, something with some, call it the Dark Prince. Quartermass and the Dark Prince. You think this is Satan, right? And what Quartermass slowly learns is it gets into sort of the real Vlad Tepes, but you go the Dracula route. That Dracula is really alive.
You're a heck of a moil. That's like Hooper crushing the paper cup.
Jewel, with that, and that would be interesting. He needs a team around him, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't mean, a blonde-headed guy wearing an ascot, an attractive redhead, and a stoner who swears his dog talks to him, but characters who actually, would be worthy to be around Quartermass. That's and then taking, and I don't want to do the haunting, but to do something like that with a group of science heroes led by Quartermass.
Be great.
God, I'd be there in a second.
Well, Quartermass, I'll tell you the best modern Quartermass movie, if we stretch modern to 1984, which for me is like yesterday. Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Ghostbusters is a funny American Quartermass movie in that you have scientists who fight the supernatural. They're much more working class, but yeah.
Quartermass.
Yeah, if you want a semi unofficial Quartermass sequel that shares a lot with Dark Shadows, Stone Tape, 1972. You can find it on YouTube if you do some digging.
Yeah.
Jewel just did some digging.
I thought we ran him up.
No, he was just mugged.
Let me ask all three of you this. I'm taking Jewel's role. Sorry, Jewel. Why do we not see science heroes like this anymore? Or are we and I'm just missing them?
No, we don't. I mean, scientists have been mistrusted because they at a fundamental level are the kids that a lot of people, stole the lunch money of in back of the cafeteria and then are reliant on them. They're modern wizards speaking in language that, sort of weird cant. They take away fun. Scientists in real life reliably take away magic and fun and stuff like that. Unless Dr. Tyson's really gotten into the, but he and Carl both big lovers of the wacky weed. I think that's it. I don't think you science heroes. It's not that we don't see science heroes very often. It's just that they're really rare, and they've always been. You can get gadgeteers. That's a little different, but I mean, seriously, go back to COVID. I think one of the many reasons why a very specific socioeconomic group had such a problem with guys like Fauci was that these are the people they had tortured, and suddenly they were dependent on them. Science heroes deal with problems that you can't always deal with a gun, and that's very tough for people to deal with. And during COVID, I went pretty deep dish into my thinking about America's relationship with scientists and why suddenly there was such hostility. Butch, you asked like a PhD dissertation level question. It's a wonderful question.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Gordon?
Yeah, I think it's two things. I think the first is that I think we've now kind of substituted the tech bro for the science hero, and it's become now synonymous with the bad guy. It's, there's no, I think culture, we've kind of shifted to that. And kind of the parallel what Patrick's talking about, I think in terms of overall culture, I think we've moved away from entertainment that engages us and makes us actually have to think and have a reaction to consuming content and having the feels about a piece of work, where having a science hero means you kind of have to stop and go, oh yeah, that kind of fits. You have to have that people during COVID were, they didn't trust scientists, but they were acting out of emotion. It's like, even now, it's like why should I still mask? Why should I get vaccinated? And that trend's been going for a while. It's like you've got literature, but there are still people. We had an outbreak of measles in the past 5 years because some people were like, I'm not going to get my kid vaccinated. That doesn't work.
Absolute insanity.
And you've got, having a science hero means that you're planting your flag on reason and rationality. And right now, most contemporary culture is focused less on, it's not even like you don't watch something and have a reaction to it. It's just something you consume. There's more story in this 90 minutes than there is in your average MCU product, because your MCU product, you could pretty much go story beat by story beat at this point.
Talk about the rise of the tech bros, the way that the scientists are sort of portrayed in that, even, I guess the only pure scientist I can think of in those movies is Hank Pym. That Tony Stark's a swinger, and he's got Jarvis doing all that work for him. And Banner's just kind of a goof. And now we got Jim from The Office as a pile of spaghetti. That is Reed. It's not the Reed Richards, the Russell Johnson-esque Reed Richards that I deserve and want.
Joel?
Real quick, how do you think Ian Garfield did as Reed Richards?
Which one was he?
He was in the 2 Fox movies. And I think his name was like Eon or something.
Yeah, sorry.
But Ian's fine.
Yeah. Jewel, let me tell you something. Have you ever heard of Kobe beef or Wagyu beef?
I've heard of the first one, yeah.
Okay. Some of the finest beef in the world. And if you get one of the finest chefs in the world, let's say James Beard comes back from the grave and prepares it exquisitely, and you take a sliver of the most perfect section of that beef and stick it in a turd and put it in your mouth, you're not going to know that it's the finest beef in the world. So who knows how he was? Who knows? He was amidst the fetid. That's what I think of him. I think that a single frame of that incredibly problematic Corman movie is closer to what I think of Herbie the Robot is closer to what I think of with than anything in that couple of movies. Everything I loved about my favorite comic book, other than Lois Lane, Superman's girlfriend, which is my favorite comic book, and they ruined it. But other than that, it was fine. Joel, what do you think?
Well, I'll answer Butch's question first before we continue that. I think it takes one thing to get anything going. For example, superhero movies have been fading and fading. And slowly you see Westerns being remade. After Westerns, it could be science fiction. It could be movies about scientists. You never know. Maybe a studio will take a chance. We won't know until it happens. But nothing is ever dead as long as it has an audience. That's the thing. And again, Quartermass has a fan base. Right?
What does?
Quartermass has a fan base.
Of course, Quartermass is good.
Well, there you go. Yes. If it has...
I thought we were still talking about that Fantastic Four.
No, if it has a fan base, if anything has a fan base and has enough where people are interested and want to see it, then it's going to eventually happen. Maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. Now, as far as the Fantastic Four question, your first question, I like the first movie, but Fox was stupid for fucking up Galactus. Go ahead.
Fox you.
Yes.
Well, first I'll say for both gentlemen, you might want to look up Doomed on Tubi because that's about the Corman Fantastic Four. But I think in terms of the whole revival and things coming back, one of the things that, and this is a personal bugaboo on my part, that I really don't like is that they're remaking the same stuff over and over again. And I think now that right now everything is led by franchises and intellectual property. I mean, even the stuff that would be considered creative is now kind of, those indie markets are in the hands of the studios. So I'm always a little leery when it's like, oh, something with a fan base will always get it. But when your fan base is used to eating McDonald's cheeseburgers and White Castle sliders, trying to serve them a nice, well-made pub burger with fries that you can pour a little bit of malt vinegar and salt on with a lovely pale ale, that's going to be a much hard. I think that's a much harder toe to toe. That's much. It's a tougher question to answer because right now there's a lot of dreck out there in terms of content, and because it's called content, it makes it seem like all it is just you watch it, you move on. We've all had an emotional and intellectual reaction to a movie, and that's something I actually miss about modern movies, is that it's no longer just about having this kind of conversation. I mean, I'm one of the few people. In fact, I may be the only person who hasn't seen Barbie or Oppenheimer, and it's like, why? Even the discourse on that is less about the ideas and more like, oh, this is a movie about this, or this is a movie about this. There's no real. You're not engaged with it. You just kind of sat. People seem to have just sat through it and go, oh, that was a thing. And that was my old man yells at cloud moment, everyone.
I had another casting idea suggestion. Kenneth Branagh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was that a good or a bad?
I'd say it's a good choice.
Yeah.
Of course, he could even do that after he quits playing Poirot.
I kind of like it. I've seen.
Oh no, I like his Poirot movies too.
As far as I'm concerned, keep making them.
Oh yeah. Oh, kind of do like a dual franchise thing.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Let me think. Anything you guys want to add about the movie in general?
I'd say this is worth tracking down. If you like science fiction, watch this movie. if you like Doctor Who, you got to see this movie. You will see how much stuff you know. Doctor Who cribs so much from this movie, especially. You will not be surprised. It is an amazing film.
I would say if you like Prince of Darkness by John Carpenter, In the Mouth of Madness by John Carpenter. What was the film that me and Patrick and you, Joel, we talked about? It was kind of an homage to Carpenter, and
Was it The Void?
Is that it? With the
Void,
at the hospital?
Yeah.
Okay. If you liked, and it's a rather obscure film, but damn, it was good. I enjoyed the hell out of it. If you like intelligent science fiction with some horrific elements, I wouldn't really call this a horror film for anybody that may get turned off.
Mm-hmm.
But if you like intelligent films and things that make you think and react to that via your mind rather than just like Gordon said, oh, that was an interesting thing. This is a damn fine movie. I think all three of the Quartermass films are good. This is my personal favorite because, as I said, Kerr is my favorite Quartermass, and I'm going to sound like an old man here, but yeah, I am turning into one. They don't make them like this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
No. Patrick?
I think you're muted, Patrick. We can't hear you.
You know, it's a great movie unless you're a commie.
Gotta be coming into space. Oh wait, sorry. Fantastic Four again.
Yeah, unless you got problems.
Yeah, if you don't like this movie, you hate puppies and democracy.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick said something, and I want to, as usual, echo. He suggested the perfect casting for Reed Richards, and that is Russell Johnson. Every time Gilligan's Island, I see anything with Russell Johnson from Gilligan's Island, I'm like, right there's Reed Richards, folks.
Yeah.
Right there.
Well, I mean, even Alex Ross drew,
Yeah.
in Marbles, drew him to look like Russell.
Well, now he shifted the model. Now he's drawing Gary Conway as Reed Richards.
This is perfectly that's
Seriously?
yeah, that's a decent choice.
Gary Conway, Land of the Giants.
Yeah. Okay. I was thinking, no, that's Jeff Conway. Sorry, the guy from Taxi. I'm like, really? Him?
Good night, Mr. Walters.
I give this movie a 10 out of 10. First of all, I want to thank Gordon for recommending it. This was a fun watch. Just from start to finish. Again, I was entertained. I sat and watched this at my computer. It was just a lot of fun to watch. It was entertaining. And that's the thing too. Like a lot of these movies you see now are 2-3 hours long, and this wasn't that, and it entertained the hell out of me.
That's about 90 minutes. It kind of flies by.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
And yet it doesn't feel like it's light. I mean, it feels like, you've really gotten a dense story in that time. And this is the sort of thing that should be used as a model for screenwriters about how you got a lot of story in a brief period of time.
Mm-hmm. And also adaptation, because he takes a 3-hour script and turns it into 90 minutes.
Nice. Is there anything you guys want to add before we get?
I want to point out I never said the words Uranus and Homo erectus to you, Joel, until now.
You had to get it in the end.
What makes it worse is that I think when you said that, I thought I had to get Joel in the end. That's even worse.
Well, it's the Pennsylvania polka.
What's it to you?
God. Links to Gordon Dymowski's Amazon page is going to be in the description box. Link to Patrick McCray's Dark Shadows Daybook of Bow is going to be in the description box. Gentlemen, Die Hard tomorrow night at 9:45. Is that good?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not available, so go ahead without me.
Let's do it. The Nakatomis are waiting.
Yeah, yippee-ki-yay, motherfuckers. Have a Merry Christmas and take care.
Good night, all.